Meeting to order. Nice to see those who have turned up. It's great. We have some apologies. Jenny, what have we got? Jim? Jim? Hazel? Oh, okay. Mover and seconder, please, they'll be accepted. Thank you, Marcus. Thank you, Andrew Brown. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Other disclosure of members' interest. Mike, you extended a phone call to me. I don't think the water tank rates as a, but that's fine. It's fine. If was it the school that won the water tank? Was it? But Nikki was involved in it. Is that what you were saying?
No, yeah. The school won it. It was just in one of the reports. I mean, that's all that's been and done. Yeah.
Nice.
So that was it.
Yeah, saw that.
And the only other thing was, in fact, no, that was it.
Okay, thank you. Clear. No, you're right. Okay. Are there any late items that need to be brought up? There be none. The confirmation of the order of the meeting, a mover and seconder, please, for that to happen. Claire and Lou, thank you so much. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Confirmation of the open minutes. On the 17th of November, we'll just go through those. Page 8, 9. Yes, Claire.
Yeah, just on page 9, item 6 in the last paragraph.
Yep.
And the second sentence, talk about medical waste contamination of the mixed recycling.
Yep. Mix recycling, it should be mixed. Typo there, that's okay. Thank you. Page 10. 11. 3 closures. 12 is 3 waters reform update by Martin. 13. 14. And that's it. Moving a second, please. The true and correct record. Thank you, Roger. Thank you, Elwyn. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Water Services quarterly report. Welcome, Martin. Nice wet day for that water, Martin. You, hey? And just by the way, Taupo's improved immensely since this report. I can tell you that my farm's had 200 millimetres in a couple of weeks, and I'm picking that even more down and going into Taupo. So it's all good. It'll be flowing past us for a while yet, I think. Hey, nice to have you here. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, councillors. I've got Renee with me today, who's our compliance and performance team leader, in case you've got any challenging questions for me. So we'll take the report as read, and I'll just go through a few highlights. As you can see in the executive summary, the resource consent hearing was held for the Council Water Treatment Plant. We did get the consent on the 3rd of December. It says here by the 1st. We got it on the 3rd of December. So that's a very good outcome. It does mean we've got, as part of that consent, 3 months busy work. There's quite a lot of stuff we've got to achieve in the first 3 months, which is setting up a monitoring plan, the Wycaria group, the community liaison group, an operational and management plan, an avian management plan, and the monitoring plan before I mentioned. So there's quite a bit of work to do in the first 3 months.
Martin, just your team worked really, really hard to get that, and so congratulations and well done.
Cool.
And it ended up well, didn't it?
It did indeed. Yeah.
Thank you.
The next item is the detailed business case for the Hamilton Waikato metro area combined wastewater treatment plant. That was supposed to be completed by the 16th of December, but that work's been extremely challenging, so that now won't be due until the new year for a decision when we come back after the break. The request for information from the DIA is progressing well. It's still a challenge, but as last count, I think we had sent 30 of the 80 odd tabs through to the DIA for review, and so they're reviewing them as we do them, and so we got some corrections to do along the way, but it's still a challenge to get there hopefully by Christmas, but we're working hard on that.
Martin, if if they're going through what we have sent and they see something that, you know, they might want to find out a little bit more about, how do they go? Is the whole program that you've sent rejected, or do they just come back to you on an individual basis on that concern that they see and what we've given them?
Yep. So they just come back on an individual response on
Yes.
any of the tabs or any of the questions and say, please, can you clarify this a bit more? This doesn't look right.
Yeah.
So we go back and have another look and correct it if we've made an error.
Yeah. What I'm trying to find out is, can you do that online to speed the process up, or is it a paper war?
It's a very large Excel spreadsheet, but we've got a live copy we share with them.
Yep.
Yeah. So their comments come through straight away, and we meet with them every week.
Yep.
To go through all the questions we've got and all the questions they've got. So it's going well, but still a lot of work.
Yeah. Good.
And then all the treatment plants are compliant for bacterium prozo. This month we did have an issue with some data loss at the Tatai water treatment plant. So we're looking through that, and hopefully it won't be a non-compliance if we can remedy that to the satisfaction of public health. So the computer there that stores the data had a couple of failures, so we lost some of the data, but there is other means of showing compliance. So we just need to convince the public health that that's all in order. So that's ongoing. And again, all zones were compliant for the period. There was one E. coli detected in the TMO2 zone at Frontier Road Reservoir, and therefore the zone will report as non-compliant to date. It's been investigation. It looks like it was a sampling error. So they take the sample, take it away. It had high E. coli. As soon as they understand that, they go back and take more samples. All the other samples were clear. So it looks like it could have been a sampling error, but again, it still shows up as a non-compliant.
You, Mr.
Yes,
Chair,
Claire.
like just on that, like that's pretty serious for council if, even though it's a sampling error, you know, it's held to be, I suppose, non-compliant. Like, was the sampling error due to, you know, carelessness or maybe a technique that's, you know, risky or something that, you know, it's prone to errors? Like, I mean, I'm just really concerned that if it's not accepted as a sampling error and we have another, you know, black mark against us, you know, it does have quite serious implications for us.
It does, and they're investigating the rationale for why that sample was high. We don't know yet, but again, of the many thousands of samples they take a year, the odd hiccup does happen. Yeah. The next one is section 4, which is water demand. So there's showing a normal pattern for this period, and so nothing to be alarmed about. Yeah.
Like Kiki is showing an increase in demand compared to historical trends. And is that due to the growth that we're seeing in Kiki? Like, is it likely to continue? And I know that, you know, there's been work done on supplementing the water supply there. Yeah.
Yeah. Good question. I don't know the answer. It could be growth. It could. Yeah. Yeah.
And so that was for the first quarter of this year. And so that was the peak drought as well. So water use was up. Kiki wasn't applied with any water restrictions over the summer. They only got to alert level 1 when Telemetry was on alert level 4. So that's highly likely a reflection of why the demand was higher.
Those red lines, the bars for July, August and September, and it's just showing a trend that it's higher than the historical, that's all. So I just thought, you know, we've been told that there's a lot of infill and other new development happening there, and so I just thought maybe that might have been the contributor.
Yeah, I'd say probably a combination.
Thank you for that money. And then section 5.1 was the rain harvesting workshops. So as you can see, there was an extensive report on those, and they went very well. So happy to answer any questions you've got on that. Or Renee is happy to answer any
Like a
questions.
rubbish bin to me.
I do have a question. Mainly, like, I just love the initiative that's been taken, and you can see that there's a big interest from the public about it. And I was wondering about doing it on a larger scale, not so much giving things away, but I know other councils have done a deal with local tank suppliers where you can get a really good discount, you know, like I think Kapiti or Wellington. I think Kapiti did a 50% discount, and Wellington City did free water tanks that were 200 litres or something.
Yeah.
So it'd be great if a larger scale initiative could be looked at.
Yeah, so this was a really good sort of pilot project for us, just to really see what the uptake was. And as you can see, it was incredibly well taken up. So yeah, we'll look at reassess this project and see what we can do on a wider scale if it is something of benefit to us and something that we could potentially fund.
So can I ask a silly question? Where does that bin go at your house? Where do you put it? I mean, where do you connect it up with water, or what do you do?
So you can connect it to any sort of downpipe. So the kit,
Yes,
the tanks come with like a connector kit.
Yeah.
And so if you've got somewhere, some people have attached it to the garages. If you've got, it just depends on space ultimately as well, whether you've got an area that you can put this tanks. They're about this tall
Yeah.
and wide. So you can put it anywhere against a downpipe.
Okay.
It's mainly for outdoor use, so it's not sort of inside potable use at all. It's just outdoor water use.
Yeah.
Chicken house runoff. That's what it's been used for at Cambridge Primary School.
Chicken house runoff. And I'm presuming the chickens are inside. It could be handy. They run off into the river. Whoa, don't go there, Phil. Don't go there, mate. Oh, it looks like the initiative was very popular anyhow, with people racing around. And yeah.
Item 5.3, the summer campaign. So not a lot to mention more than what's already in there, but other than the fact we're likely to move to alert level 1 sometime between now and Christmas. Just working through that with Hampton City Council, so we go on a combined approach, and that'll be district-wide level 1. And that's more around setting expectations and starting to get people back into the water conservation area, and so they start getting there before we get to this one.
Yeah, sorry, can I just ask, last year we had some kickback from users who require water, like businesses and stuff like that. They weren't informed soon enough that there was going to be restrictions and they couldn't water plants, because local garden centres would have ordered less plants because there was going to be restrictions in there. So do we do a campaign to like talk to like nurseries and like garden centres and stuff, and just at least say, hey, we are potentially going into water restrictions in 4 or 8 weeks time, whatever?
I don't think we had 8 weeks notice before we went to alert level 4 this year, but yeah, we'll certainly try and do better. But ultimately, those businesses should be, you know, if it's a long, hot, dry summer, you know, it should be expected that we're going to go into water restrictions, I think. But yeah, certainly we'll start the summer campaign advertising that we're in alert level 1, and the expectation is we could go further. But yeah, we probably won't target those people individually, but they should probably be aware.
We have a list of like key stakeholders that maybe council could engage with. Just send a reminder out just to say that we might be going to water restrictions, and just so they have a heads up. I know with the garden centres, they pre-order like product like months in advance, well, which my office doesn't help, but just so they're caught out.
Yeah.
Yeah, last year was a really exceptional year for us. It was the first time we'd ever gone to alert level 4, and that's when those businesses were actually impacted. Before, they've never been impacted. So I think there's definitely some learnings and stuff like that, and a bit more of a target to the commercial users, especially as we escalate through. But it was the first time we've ever gone there, and so I think it was a really good point for us to really reflect and say, what can we do if we ever go to alert level 4? And so we would really like to engage with the commercial aspect a little bit sooner, if the summer was looking like we were likely to head toward level 4 again in the future. Yeah.
Mike?
Yeah, just from memory last year, there was a split in terms of alert levels, which there hadn't been from memory in the past. We'll just note here that we're looking at doing that again. No, looking at going back to a consistent approach, but I'm pretty sure Cambridge last year didn't reach any sort of high alert levels because we've got plenty of water. So if the only rationale is just consistency of message, what was the data you know, what drives us going back to alert levels that are the same across the district as opposed to actually real need, because it just seems nonsensical to me.
Yeah, so this year, at the beginning of this year, only in the last sort of 2 to 3 weeks, we've actually seen a bit of an increase in the water for Cambridge. So the Waikato River was really suffering from the drought, as well as Lake Taupo. So I'm not sure if we actually have graphs in this report that highlight the Lake Taupo levels, but it's literally only just increased. So our planning has been actually Cambridge is under risk this year based on this, the effects of the drought. So yeah, the snow melt and that sort of thing hasn't quite happened yet for Lake Taupo to feed through. So we like to go for a consistent approach in messaging. We also noticed an increase in the per capita use in Cambridge this year when we did our annual water balances. And that was because there was literally no sort of campaign or effective messaging around water use and conservation.
Well, that's good to hear. I guess as long as it's each year considered on its merits, which is what I'm hearing. So thank you for that.
Roger's next, then Phil. All right. Yeah.
Justify the introduction of water meters as helping to reduce the overall consumption. To me, it's a little bit of a challenge of following years without justification. If we go in,
Roger.
sorry,
Roger.
what?
Thank you.
Yeah. Am I on? Yeah.
Yeah.
And the restrictions go to level 2, level 3, level 4, etc. Will that same consistent messaging apply to Cambridge, even if the water consumption is not getting to that particular level?
So we'll go district-wide with level 1, set that message, then any other step beyond that to 2, 3 or 4 will be dependent on the source water supply. So there will be a...
So it will not be
it will
automatic
diverge
district-wide.
if needed to. Yeah.
Thank you.
Renee, could we possibly move from the restriction word maybe to conservation? I think it's got a softer tone, but it's got a more meaningful meaning.
Yeah, we often refer to it as water alerts to the
Yeah,
public,
yeah.
but often internally, a lot of people
Yeah.
think, what are they, especially around COVID times at the moment with
Yeah.
the word alert being thrown around. So yeah, we definitely push it as water alerts to the public, but often internally we refer to it as water alerts.
Yeah.
But yeah, that noted, yeah.
If you go, just for information, this is, if you go onto the Mercury site, you can pick up all the water levels of Lake Taupo and the lakes. Those of you who went out to the Friends of Wycaria out at Lake Karapiro would have seen 4 of the 5 gates fully opened when we went out there that night. And when I read this, I'm going, why would they have done that? So did anybody pick that up? It's just one of those things. Yeah. No. Okay, thank you. Carry on. Useless information.
They do need to produce electricity. I think that's why they open.
Yes. Well, that's the reason I think we're always going to have water going past, because you've got 9 dams having to tune out a bit of electricity.
Section 6, levels of service. So not that all everything's in the KPIs. There's no issues there, other than the previously mentioned E. coli event in Telemetry.
Is your mum's in there, Marcus? Urgent water fault? Because you probably won't have any restrictions over in Telemetry this year now that you've found that.
And then section 8, I think, projects. So all the maintenance and service and renewal projects are progressing well. And then in the major capital works, the Cambridge Wastewater plant upgrade is complete. And there's a new project to start to install a replacement aeration lagoon, and that's currently in the design phase. TMO2 wastewater treatment plant work is nearing completion, and we're currently in the commissioning and optimization phase. So that's all going well. The TA water supply project at Parallel Road, the treated water main is 90% complete. The water main was completed a while ago, and the new treatment plant at Parallel Road is progressing very well. And although there's a contractual completion date of October, the current program is to be commissioned in April, with completion hopefully in June. So they're going extremely well.
Wow.
They've got the buildings up now, so it's all covered. So there's no delays for weather or anything now. So hopefully in June we'll have the answer to TA's water.
It's a nice time of the year to be commissioning, isn't it? Because,
It is,
you know, the
yeah.
water usage is right down. And
Yeah.
get rid of all those air bubbles.
Yes. And it will be a complicated commissioning program because we've got to commission it for 12 megalitres a day, and we've got to then get rid of that water. We can't use it, so it will be a complicated commissioning phase. But we've started working on that already.
Oh, okay.
For the Wycaria wastewater project, so work's progressing well on all 4 sections, and so that's going really well. And works have started on the Christie Ave wastewater pump station improvements. And in section 10, Tomato ROI, the water regulator. So the water services bill is due in Parliament this. I tried to see this morning if it had gone last week, but I couldn't find it, so it's due this week. It was bill number 4 of the new sitting. It was delayed in time because the first 2 bills were climate change and increase in sick leave, which took longer to get through Parliament. So it's due to be heard. It's have its first hearing before Christmas, and then it will go to the select committee, and then hopefully back in March for its second reading, and then be enacted by July. And so then Tiamata ROI will actually be able to start work once that bill's been passed. At the moment, they're just an enactment phase, so they've got no legal rights at the moment. Happy to answer any other questions.
Thank you, Sue. You.
Through you. Good morning. Just a couple of questions. I have to find them right back to the beginning in respect to the business case. Detailed business case. You've said it was challenging. Can you sort of elaborate a little bit further as to why we've not met the internal project deadlines so far? Sorry, I'm on page 1. Yeah, 16 of the report.
Yeah. Due to the complicated nature of trying to identify what treatment plant would be needed, where it could be located. So there was an awful lot of options. There's been an awful lot of meetings held with iwi and with the governance group. So just trying to corral all those people to take them on the journey has taken longer than expected. And so the final decision on what the treatment plant needs to do and where it can be located has taken longer than expected. So it's just pushed it out beyond the 16th of December. Yeah.
So it's just the complexity of the issues.
Just the complexity of the issues.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, that's cool. I did have another one. Oh yeah, in terms of the failure at the Telemetry wastewater treatment plant on page 25 of our agenda, do we have any understanding of why that happened yet? Whether it was a fault or was it maintenance or human error? Or...
So yeah, there was a fault of the PLC that controls the plant, faulted.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the cause of it. What started the effect, and then there was one pump that was not connected to the PLC. So when the PLC failed, everything shut down, but one pump hadn't been connected to it. It was just purely in manual, and that kept running and emptied the plant.
Okay.
Was the cause of it. We're still waiting to hear from the regional council if they'll prosecute us or not. It's been a while now, so hopefully as time passes, the risk reduces.
So have we taken steps to try and avoid that happening again, or was
Yes.
it just purely a mechanical failure that was unavoidable?
Yep. So it's the age of the PLC. As part of the upgrade, there is a new one going in. So that's will be replaced once the new project's finished. So that will stop that, and also the pump that was on manual has been connected to the PLC, so it's on auto. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Cool. Thank you for that.
Okay, any further questions? Good comprehensive report. Thank you, Renee, and thank you, Martin. I need a mover and seconder, please, to receive it. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Elwyn. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Thank you very much. Next item is Lake Tiko Utu stormwater improvements. You staying there, Martin?
Yep. Yep. I'm bringing Britta up to answer the technical questions. Okay, take the report as read. Just a few highlights. Obviously, the original stormwater quality business cases were deferred during the LTP discussions until after we've got our new stormwater discharge consent. But obviously since then there's been a lot of public consultation around the water quality at the lake. So obviously this report say we can bring forward the first stage of the improvements of the stormwater discharge to the lake. And so this report highlights what stage 1 would be and what the future stages 2 and 3 could look like. But we're not saying we can fund those, but we can fund stage 1 next year to get that underway. And that includes installing some rain gardens at the high traffic areas, at the traffic lights and the roundabout, installing rain gardens, and then installing some proprietary stormwater devices at the bottom of the outlet before it goes into the lake. So that's in essence
Yeah.
the outcome. If any technical answers on what rain gardens do, and
Yeah.
the proprietary device spreader can answer that.
There's some good diagram. Yeah, go. Oh, sorry, go Claire.
Yeah. So I was surprised at the cost of the rain gardens,
Yeah.
$18,000 each.
As well.
That's purely because we're retrofitting.
Oh, right. Yeah. Right. So new ones wouldn't normally be that much.
New ones probably sitting around, if you had a rental development, doing subdivision, that'd be around.
Right.
It's always more challenging to retrofit than it is to put them in.
Yeah, obviously. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't realise that would be the biggest cost driver, actually. Yeah. And is there any way of measuring the effectiveness of them? You like the areas that they're going to be cited. You know, you've given justification for why those are selected, and that sounds great. But are there going to be measurements beforehand and after the installation? You know, so we know whether or not it's making a difference to the quality of the stormwater that's going into the lake.
You can definitely do that. So you can do some water quality testing of certain parameters beforehand and then afterwards. But I think it's generally accepted that through the appropriate design of these rain gardens and proprietary devices that they should remove 90% of the contaminants.
Yeah. So I guess there's a cost with monitoring, and you were saying it's probably not necessary that you know that it's going to make. I just thought it would be a good news story that if we go to the effort of putting them in, we could also demonstrate clearly what the improvement has been at those sites or something. But I guess it depends on what the cost would be.
Yeah, we'll certainly do monitoring pre and post. And once we've got our stormwater discharge consent, there'll be a lot of monitoring required. So that it will be ongoing beyond that. Yeah.
Some people suggested like socks, to go with, and I noticed that proprietary device probably isn't a sock. I don't know, but the good thing about a sock is I guess people can actually see it and know that it's catching rubbish and stuff.
Yeah. So I guess with rain gardens and the proprietary devices, they are there so that you catch those larger pollution gardens. So we're hoping with these devices done that already, but I guess looking at the other networks, so we're talking about our stage 1 where we're treating the high trafficked areas. There are those other areas where we have got some pipes running in there.
Following up on that though, does that in itself cause problems that when you're capturing these large items, like do they actually block up the whole system because you don't get them cleared often enough, or unexpectedly, it gets blocked and so you have a bit of a flood? Like, is that likely to happen?
Yes, they do. So that is a lot more.
Yeah, if your sock's blocked and you haven't cleaned it, and then there's a big downpour, it can block the pipe. Yeah.
I think probably with the lake closure, some of the key concerns with the lake from those small.
Liz.
Thanks, Graham. So look, I think that Lake Te Kutu, our community has signalled it's very, very important that this lake is improving its health. So there's no question that the suggestion that you've made is going to be well received. But I guess just following on from a little bit from Claire, I think it's really important that we let our community know that following the consultation, that this work is going to be done, and year 1 and 2 is not that far away. So it just feels like a really nice sequence of events following the consultation that was done earlier. So if we can get some communications around the plan as such, to signal that, hey, the quality is really important to us. We know it is, and this is what we're going to be doing. So I just rather see that sooner rather than later. Just so that we've, it feels like, this is a really good news story, I think. And hopefully we'll see some real improvements as well.
Mike.
Just just want to clarify the cost estimates. Just at stage 2, the rain garden construction supervision, I'm assuming the formula is the same as the 12 times 18,000, which is 216. So is it 32 times 18,000 gets to 480?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Possibly revisit the numbers there.
Yeah. Have a look. Yeah.
Lou.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question. With your rain gardens, I'm quite intrigued with the idea and the technology. It seems to be a very positive thing. Will it be that's lower the temperature? Will it take the hydrocarbons out? Because we've got a real problem with anything running off anything like this with the hydrocarbons coming through
Yes,
it.
so the rain gardens assist with hydrocarbon removal, and so does
That does actually work. And is there any sort of maintenance on that side of it that you have to do regularly to have it continue that?
So there is some, both devices require maintenance. The rain garden has more maintenance required with sediment removal, just to ensure that the plants that do a lot of that removal function. And then every five or 10 years or so, you do need to remove the filter soil out of that and remove it out and replace it. With the proprietary devices, they have a filter in them that you do need to take out and wash out and clean out.
It's not a sand filter, it's actually a sock type thing, is it?
Yeah, it's sort of these
The cartridge type.
yeah, cartridge thing with things. Yeah.
Britta, can you tell me exactly where you'll have the gardens? Just, they're not going to be right. They're going to be sunken, I presume, to get some fall from the roading. So are they going to be sort of back towards the gates and the footpath or in that area? Or?
There's sort of a couple of thoughts around where they'll potentially go. Their best bang for buck is as close as possible to the intersections where they wouldn't be in the road. They'd be set off behind that, yes. And they do need a bit of a drop in them because you have to store water in them. Yeah. That's part of their function.
Okay.
We have also looked at potentially putting them closer to those gates as well. It's just subject to the stability and the earthquake risk there.
Yeah. Okay. So it's only a concept level at the moment, so we haven't done detailed design of where they actually go.
Okay. Just for your information, I'll ask Dawn to make comment. I said to Dawn that I felt that we should go to the Waikato River Authority and see if we can get some funding, simply because I see this as the same cleaning as a riparian planting that I would do along my banks of the streams and rivers on my farm. And so, Dawn, do you want to just go from there and tell us how you got on and what it's looking like?
Certainly it appears that is an opportunity that we could pursue. So that's something that staff will be looking into as to what's the mechanism for applying for co-funding. The fact that council's committed this funding, it's hopefully attractive to them to come on board with us and support this. So we'll certainly pursue it and report back on how we go with that.
Dawn, do they have you learned, do they have a couple of application periods a year or one, or what's the process, do you know, for applications?
Yeah, sorry, I don't have that detail in terms of what that process looks like, just that it does look like an opportunity, sorry.
Yeah, cool. Okay, anything else that needs to be sorted before they go? There's a recommendation there, once again from Martin, that the report be received. So if there's no more questions, I'm looking for a movement second. Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, Lou. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Wakakotahi, NZTA. Who's doing that one? Thank you, guys. Oh no, oh no, he's all gone. Right, take a recess. Are we ahead of time? No, that's okay. Yeah. Do they know the time? Yeah. Just waiting for Brian and the transport team to come. We're right on the money. So, yeah. 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 Yeah.
Certainly happy if you provide me with a list of stakeholders and contacts, and yeah, we'll organise some correspondence and get that out. So, yeah.
Thanks, Brian. Liz, can we not just alert them with an email and say that if you go online to Waipa, it's already there under service delivery? Yeah. Yeah. Oh, gotcha. Yeah. Morning, Brian. Perfect timing, sir.
Great. Thank you very much. I'll just catch my breath after the run through the rain. So the technical audit from the Wakakotahi and the Ridge group reports is basically a good news story for council to a large degree, in that both the Ridge group and Wakakotahi have sort of patted Waipa on the back for the good quality of the roading network and program and the things that we do. But as with any audit, there's always some findings that they say we can do better on. So just taking the report as read, the Wakakotahi try and do these technical type audits every 3 years, and then they also do the financial audits at a 3-year sort of time frame as well. And Ridge Road Efficiency Group publish annual reports, amalgamating data from different sources to provide those sort of score sheets as you've see in the appendices there. So the key findings then of the Wakakotahi report, as I said, they rate Waipa as effectively delivering the transportation program and effectively spending their part of the investment and maintaining the road network and improving it. The takeaway areas where they say that Waipa can improve is really in that road user safety area. And that doesn't come as a surprise to us, because we know in our growing district, and we've got some very heavily trafficked roads, and in particular our rural roads where speeds are higher, that's where our fatal and serious crashes tend to happen. So they've given us some recommendations, things that we can do about that. The first one there, they noted that from time to time the maintenance contractor doesn't get their timing right, and there can be pavement faults on the roads that need to be repaired earlier or should be signposted if they present a risk. So we certainly take that on board. That had always been our practice, but sometimes we need to reinforce to our contractors, particularly when we have dry summers and our peat roads go out of shape. They're often chasing their tail trying to patch potholes and fill cracks and address settled areas. And we saw this last summer probably a lot more signage on our peat roads advising of hazards when we couldn't make the repairs when we wanted to. So we've certainly taken that away from their observations. The low cost, low risk program, again, we probably bit off more than we can chew in terms of back in 2017 when we applied for funding for the low cost, low risk program. There is a tendency to ask for more money than you need on the basis that we had a number of growth projects and other things that were potentially coming up in that LTP period. And if it was possible to get some transport agency subsidy for those projects, we were going to try. And so when various projects didn't actually get approved in the LTP or developers slowed down their development, then that left council without any funds to pick up funds from the transport agency. So there's the list here is which I could pass around. Anybody could have a look at if they want, all the things that we said were possibilities that we might be able to pick up subsidy on. And I've highlighted the ones there, the ones that we have actually achieved on and spent as described, but there's others there that were sort of placeholders that if we could, we would, but we didn't. So that's the reason for declaring that money surplus. Then the next one, 4.1, just very much a technical issue around how often we condition rate the roads, but the auditors weren't aware of the prior agreement we had with them to depart from their standard. 5.1 was the safety features installed on the road, like edge marker pegs and curve warning signs. So we certainly have a lot of edge marker pegs and curve warning signs on our network, often a lot more than our surrounding neighbours. And it was quite telling when we drove from our network into other local authorities on their boundaries, how often the edge marker pegs stopped or the curve sign stopped, and there was no delineation at all. So we certainly have a lot of those facilities, and it takes a big effort to maintain them all. But we are, I think, doing a reasonably good job of that, and we have noted an improvement project there to get some more consistency on some of those roads where historically crashes have occurred on one corner, and so we've put up signs in those locations, but now crashes are starting to happen at other corners on that road, and we need to ensure that consistency of signage is in place. 5.2 there about temporary traffic management at work sites. So the auditors came just as we were launching into many large work sites with water main installation on Cambridge Road and other places. So they saw all of that and noted that at times the contractors weren't 100% compliant with the Copton Code of Practice. So we brought in an experienced assistant on contract to help us out through the summer with that role. And we've done that again this year in terms of with our traffic management coordinator resigning. We've filled that post now, but we may require to keep that consultant contractor in place or to come back in the new year to help us out with the projects. Now the next one, 5.3, is quite an interesting one. The auditors noted that some of our rural roads were narrow and posed a risk. And certainly that's something that councillors around the table will be aware of, because they'll have heard from ratepayers or property owners about the narrowness of some roads. So within our response to the audit, I've put quite a bit of information in the history of the way Waipā district has operated since it was formed in 1989. We did widen a lot of roads. We virtually the whole area that was Matamata County Council around Mangatautri, we had to rebuild just about every road and widen it out because they were all like goat tracks. A lot of the Raglan County area, Te Pāhu, has all been widened. North of Cambridge, a lot of those roads were all widened and improved after 1989. So we have made significant progress, but what we're finding is that it's often the old, what were Waipā County Council roads that were built really well, only narrow, so the pavements have never deteriorated to the point where we've need to rebuild them. So ones like Owaraka Valley Road was built of all the river shingle out there, so it's got great big rocks like this under the road, really robust, but it's just too narrow. And when you've got a road that's narrow and shaped like this, and you try and tag a bit on the side, the road shape is now not right. So you've got this bump in the middle and then flat bits on the outside. So it's a real mission to try and just tag seal onto the edge of roads. Hence, we've always tried to reconstruct and do the whole width of the road. So it's not an easy thing just to go and do what they say and widen them. And unfortunately, the standard that they suggested we do it to, the Australian standard, which suits their desert roads and where they just grade up the dust and rock and put a coat of seal on it, doesn't suit our topography where we're rolling countryside and around the sides of mountains and things. So I agree we need to come up with a strategy, identify those high-risk locations where some widening is needed and have a program to do that. But it's not something that we're going to be able to do overnight, and it'll take, you know, some careful thinking and development of a business case and strategy, and really identify those areas where it's really worthwhile reconstructing a road which is otherwise in good shape, because it will be costly.
Yes.
Yes, big cost implications. Yeah. So the project would have to stack up on the basis of safety alone, because there's not, you know, often little in the way of maintenance savings to be had from widening the road. Obviously, some of the work that we've done already around speed management and lowering speed on these rural roads, if the road is narrow and it's got low traffic volumes, in some situations, the better case would be to lower the speed and reduce the risk of somebody having a crash running off the road on a corner or something, rather than, you know, spend millions of dollars widening the road for hardly any traffic. So that's where weighing up which ones to widen, which ones to lower the speed on, how to treat that safety risk without wasting ratepayers' money.
Brian, you know, you've given us a good rationale around your approach and that. Like I'm thinking of the Pirongia roads, like Pirongia Road itself, and also Frontier Road, which are nice flat roads. Frontier Road's pretty narrow, but both of them would really benefit from the shoulder treatment that you mentioned, because mainly because of the cyclists, you know, that because hardly any of them have got that shoulder area that a cyclist could use. You know, I don't know if you're using that criteria, you know, when you're considering having shoulders, or even getting it a standard thing that contractors do when they do maintenance, to make sure that those shoulders are extended, because like there's absolutely nothing on most of those stretches, and it would just make it a lot, you know, I guess cyclists would just feel a lot more comfortable, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting that rural roads, that width that we design for is often, you know, the space outside the white line is often not thought of as a space for cyclists to cycle, because what tends to happen is that if you do create a big space outside the white line, you get loose chip and other debris and stuff build up there, and then the cyclists won't actually, because there's no traffic on it, it doesn't get thrown off the road, so the cyclists won't cycle on it. They cycle on the edge of the lane or just inside the white line. So as long as there is enough width that you're not surprised you come around a corner and there's the cyclist is forced to be in the middle of the lane and you run into them. So it's more about visibility and having appropriate speeds rather than creating a separate shoulder. Yeah.
Brian, I got a call quite a while ago, or a couple of years ago, from Fighton Motors that run the bus service out there. Cedric and I went out there and met them. What had happened is the bus was going down to the school and the tanker was going the other way, and they hit their wing mirrors and smashed them off. After that, I go down that way all the time to my farms, but a heavy vehicle has to have its right-hand tyres over the white line to fit on it. it's already cribbing on the other side of the road with traffic. It's really,
Yeah.
Hadn't noticed that until that happened. So yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And interestingly, Owaraka Valley Road, when I stopped there, probably after that happened and measured the road, and it's probably less than that 6.2 meters
I think so
that the
too.
guys noted in places. But I did also note that the centre line hadn't been painted
in the middle,
completely in the middle. It
No,
was slightly
no.
offset from the centre, which doesn't help that situation.
Yeah, you're right. Thank you, Phil.
Waipapa is like that too. Going through there, and on one day there was 7 milk tankers coming the other way through that windy bit, which is right on our boundary from Waipapa. But Brunschool Road between Whitehall and Tamiro, it's a stunning road. It's a beautiful road, but it's pretty narrow. I think that's still 100 kilometres an hour, although you can't consistently do 100 kilometres an hour. Dibble trucks come one direction. They come from Tauranga to Morrinsville and through there to go to Whitehall, the quarries. Is that a road that is, because it's quite narrow, is that a road that you could be on your radar? Or?
So interesting, the Road.
They've had a good go at it. Yeah. Took the banks back. Yeah.
Good quality road. Good surface. Right.
Through the chair.
Oh, sorry, Mike.
Just a thought, really, but just picking up on Claire's comments, and I'm thinking what your meaning is widening the roads to make it safer for cyclists. Is that what I'm hearing? Right.
I thought about it because of the shoulder thing, but actually it's having wide enough lanes so that the cyclists can fit there comfortably, because like Frontier Road, I mean, the lane is minimal anyway, so you don't really feel that comfortable when any car passes you, actually.
So this mightn't be a popular comment I'm about to make, but it's just food for thought that you have a dog, you pay a dog license. I go to a library, I have to pay to get out most of the books. A lot of this world is user pays. I use the road, I've got a diesel vehicle, I pay road users, I pay registration. But we've widened all our footpaths to turn them not into footpaths, but to really cycle into transport lanes. And this talk around widening roads for cyclists, I mean, I'm all for it and I support the cyclists, but there's actually a cost, there's a massive cost in what we're doing here to shift transport patterns. And I'm just wondering, I mean, are the right people, cyclists don't contribute to this at all, apart from just being a general ratepayer. Is there anything in the government's thought about anything in this area? I mean, they are users of all these areas which are costing council money and ratepayers. Not a popular probably thing to bring up, but it's just a reality that someone's paying for this. The shift to transportation modes is evident, but it's really falling on the general ratepayer to increasingly pay for all this thing, where most ratepayers aren't actually users of some of the reason we're doing this.
Yeah, I think it's a good discussion point. Generally, our rural roads, we would not be designing them specifically for cyclists or widening them for cyclists. So widening would generally be there, because it's the right width for the car traffic and the truck traffic using them. And if we get that right, generally the cyclists will be safe as well. So I don't think we would be specifically going out and saying this is a cycling rural road and therefore we'll widen it for cyclists. It'd be more, likes of Frontier Road, probably 60 or 70% of Frontier Road has been widened in the last 30 years. And, I've looked after numerous projects out there that's widened it, but there's still some old pieces in there. That last 30% that's never been widened because the pavement's still in really good condition. albeit it's narrow. And those become the spots which are hazardous for traffic running off the road on a corner, or hazardous for the driver trying to get out of the road to turn into their driveway, or for the cyclists if they're there. So, cycling wouldn't be the driver, it would be other issues that would lead us to widen the road.
I guess maybe just thinking of a mechanism could be at point of purchase of a bicycle, for instance, that, if there was a tax on that, and then councils, if they showed a business case that there was going to be benefit for cyclists in their regional area, that they could tap into it. I mean, this is at national level, not at council level. It's going to become huge, and increasingly every footpath is not going to be 1.2 meters or 750 meters wide. They're all going to be 2 to 3 meters or 2.5 meters through the country over time, and there's just quite a cost to it. That's all.
Yep. I guess the cyclists would argue that because they're going to be healthier and using the health system less and polluting the air less, that they should get a discount and car drivers should pay more. So, but all those things come into the mix, and thank goodness, I'll leave the politics to you guys to sort out that thing.
Free bicycles.
There's already a tax when you buy your bike. It's called GST.
Yes.
The other interesting thing is, when you were doing some trials out at Rotorangi, and there was a hell of hula out there, we had a meeting out there with the police, and they told us, you are entitled to that left-hand side of the road. You can go 1 or 2 or 3. You are entitled to that left-hand side of the road. Now, most people would say, I'm not going to do that because I take my life into my hands. But that was actually what he's telling us. And I know that when Jenny and I are cycling now and we get near an intersection or a roundabout, we go to the middle of the road, because you have people that just have to pass you before the roundabout. It's crazy. So we kind of dominate that, and they just have to fit in behind us on the road.
Yeah.
So it's a safety thing that you just have to do. Yeah. I was going down Norfolk the other day. Jenny was behind me. A car was coming up, and he went past me and immediately pulled into the side road right in front, and I'm on full lock on my brakes. Why the woman couldn't just wait until we had gone past, it was incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jenny and I are still friends now. Yeah.
Good. So I better move on. I don't want to take all of your morning. So on page, so page 43 there, safety performance as a primary challenge. So this was, probably the key point from the audit for me, where the Transport Agency is looking for us to do more around road safety, because that, the Road to Zero and the government's strategy, it's all about reducing this cost to New Zealand as a whole. So they noted that, the number of deaths and serious injury crashes is increasing in Waipa, and has been for a number of years. And that is because of our high growth rate, high population density compared to our neighbours. And we do have much higher vehicle kilometres travelled each year on our network, than our neighbours. Whether that's Otaronga, Waitoma, or even Waikato district, they got a lot of low volume roads compared to us.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Brian, those statistics, it seems to me that we possibly have quite a lot of through traffic, if you know what I mean, rather than residents. Is there any breakdown in the death and serious injury about where the people live, where they, in our district or outside?
It is certainly possible to do that analysis, but it does involve getting the details of each, the fine details of each crash report and assessing it. But and we know that, yes, it sometimes is visitors, but on the whole, largely it would be local people. And we hear about, the motorcyclist killed on Cambridge Road, who was a local person. The other fatality at the Cambridge end not so long ago were local people. So on the whole, it is a lot of local people on our network, and they are unfortunately more likely to be involved in these fatal or serious crashes. So in that graph on page 44 with the circles and everything, it does show Waipa's position in terms of we're out to the right of the graph, and that at the time of this survey, a lot of the people of Waipa think that actually their road safety is pretty good in terms of the standard of the roads and the infrastructure they drive on. our position on that graph in terms of fatal and serious crashes per million vehicle kilometres travelled each year is right down at the lowest point, meaning that in that exposure with vehicle kilometres travelled, we are better than the other districts. But that doesn't take away from the fact that 20 to 25 people in our district are seriously injured or killed in a typical year. So that is something that we've got to keep working hard on because with our growth, it's possible, that it'll just keep increasing year on year unless we make some changes. Obviously, the government's Road to Zero and police enforcement and speed management, all of those things can have an impact. And we're working with the Transport Agency on their National Safe Network program, where we work with them to try and identify where is the best location to spend money, what are the best types of treatments to prevent crashes. And we're hoping that as they get their funding approved from the government in the budget, they'll be able to put more of that our way to assist us to achieve a reduction in crashes.
Brian, it's a sad thing to say, but they've just taken 50 million off the maintenance of rural roads and put it onto public transport. It's only just happened with the government policy statement that came out in late October. Because I challenged it in our meetings over there. I thought and said, "Hey, this was crazy. This is that's what the focus is on."
Yeah, I guess I'm not seeing that in terms of the funding application that we've put forward for our draft LTP is obviously a gradual increase in spending.
Yeah.
We're not getting any pushback from them on that.
Okay.
And I am aware that they are, the government policy statement is saying they're going to spend more on state highways because they're aware that they've dropped the ball a bit and the condition of the highway network has gone backwards. They're going to spend more on maintenance, and that's where a lot of the fatal and serious crashes happen on the state highways. So I'm hoping that that won't be an impact on Waipara or this region. So then,
Ryan, like some of the higher profile crashes that have occurred haven't had anything, it's been more to do with medical episodes actually, that I'm aware of. And so all the investment in safety and speed reductions probably going to have, it's not going to cover every contributing factor to a crash. I can appreciate that in a way it's good to say, well, we need investment, in the roads to make them as safe as possible. But I mean, I think we're always going to have some serious and fatal crashes because of these other factors that contribute to them.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There is often a great deal of randomness in all the factors that combine together to cause a crash, whether it's a medical illness, bald tires on a car, on a wet road, distraction, the cell phone rings or people look down at a text message or something like that. So all of those things can occur, but we do know that, there are treatments that do work, in terms of what you see happening on the highways with wider roads, with wide centre lines or barriers and things like that. We know that they can certainly prevent some crashes and fatalities. So I'm not saying that low volume roads on Waipara will receive those expensive treatments, but simple things like lowering the speed and actually drivers deciding that actually it's not safe to drive at 100 kilometres an hour on this narrow rural road and 80 or 70 is better, and then they will certainly be a great deal safer and have a much lower risk of a serious or fatal crash. Yeah. So while we can't fix everything, we can make the signposts appropriate to help change people's driving habits. Yeah. The road efficiency group, then, I'm just aware I've gone over time. The road efficiency group, which is that colourful spreadsheet at the back with all of the graphs, it shows that our delivery, historically, we spend sort of in the middle range of our peer group. So we're in that sort of Goldilocks territory of, we live in a district where we've got great geology, the sand soils and the ash soils, so our roads are easy to maintain. We have some of the best quarries in the country on our doorstep, so the materials are good quality and relatively inexpensive to us. That means our roads do last often longer and are smoother than our neighbours. And we don't have a lot of those natural hazards like hillsides that are sliding down or rivers washing away our roads and bridges all the time. So as I say, we are in that Goldilocks territory, and that shows up in the statistics.
I'm looking at page 66 of our agenda, which is the regs sort of assessment of us. But one area that we're not doing better than our peers is the new and improved walking and cycling facilities, which I presume are wider footpaths and cycleways. And like we're right at the bottom. Yeah. And
yes.
I'd really love to see us lift our game there. Yeah. Because obviously I'm pretty keen on cycling here and other modes of transport. But yeah, you know, like, yeah, it'd be great if we could get, an improvement there.
Yes.
Is there any reason why we're traditionally or, historically not doing that well?
Yeah, I suspect it's because traditionally we've done cycling projects, whether it was contributing to the Te Awa Cycleway, we've done that outside of the Transport Agency funding program. And so it doesn't register, even though we've spent money on the activity, it doesn't register in their system. So it doesn't show up on the graph. But I mean, that is about to change. Obviously, the Transport Agency is giving us money for the Te Awa extension. They've given us money for the footbridge on State Highway 3 to create that. A lot of the projects coming forward, like the urban mobility program and walking and cycling there, will bump up our spending in the future. Yeah. So I won't go into any detail on this.
No,
just taking questions that you've got. I don't want to take up all your morning.
Brian, we've asked them as we went through, I think. So if anybody's got any pressing issues. Okay, so I'll go to the recommendation of the report being received. Mover and seconder, please. Thank you, Phil. Thank you. Yep. Thank you, Mike. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Thanks a lot, Ryan. We'll see you after a cup of tea. Come and have a cup of tea with us. We'll break for a cup of tea and be back here at 20 past. call the meeting to order. Welcome Brian back again and Ching Hao. Welcome, presenting the Streets for People, Innovating Streets project.
Right.
Floor is yours.
Right, thank you. Good morning, everyone. So I'm here to seek committee's approval for some traffic resolutions that we want to have for our Streets for People Innovating Street project in Cambridge. So the project is aimed to create safe routes for kids to be able to walk, bike, or scooter to school safely. The change we want to make is temporary. We want to use the tactical urbanism treatments, that's including pop-up cycleways, intersection build-outs, creating safe pedestrian crossing with speed bumps at intersections. And in order to do it, we need to remove some parking to build cycleways, remove parking near intersections, and create some one-way streets. Also change intersection priorities. So I have listed them on the table on the second page of the report. So we already had a meeting with Cambridge councillors last week to go through some of the detailed changes and the impact of the change. So we have provided two options to the committee to consider. We can do it by either traffic resolutions or temporary traffic management. And after comparing both of the treatment, we recommend we will go for the traffic resolution changes. So that's listed in my recommendation in the report. And last week, we have some school workshops with the 4 Cambridge schools, and we have heard very positive feedback from the schools. And yeah, it seems everyone can't wait for the change next year. Yeah. So any feedback or questions regarding to my...
Just before we go, and thanks, Chin Hao, just before we go into discussion, you will notice that Mike has left the room, a potential conflict of interest, and he won't take any, sorry, not the, Mike, could you leave the room? He's done that. Well, removed himself from the table from that discussion because he's heavily involved there, so that's good. Okay, this is going to be a little bit contentious, and I think for the community, we absolutely need to get it right. Some of the things you're going to be doing, which I'm not thrilled a bit about, are going to be contentious, and I think we're going to get a lot of negative feedback if it doesn't go well. So I'm very, very supportive of what you're doing around the schools, but I've got some real issues with parking and Wilson Street taking out, Duke Street becoming one way, and no right turn into Dick Street. And I'm looking for a little bit more information today as we go through it, and particularly in the traffic counting. Brian, you had that there for nearly 2 weeks. I walked over it every morning and jumped on it to make sure it was counting properly. And so we don't have any figures in terms of what traffic is going through there. And I do know from the briefing the other day that you did call it a rat run, and it's not a rat run. It is the only way you can go west to keep out of the CBD, which is very, very heavily congested. And that's where I think we're going to get a lot of feedback from people. But anyhow, I'll leave it open to other councillors. I've had a good look on my morning walks and taken some measurements and all that sort of thing. So I'm well versed. So I'll leave it over to the questions that you might want to ask, and I'll ask some subsequent ones as I go along. Thank you. Liz, Roger.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Now my perception of this is that all of these changes are only temporary, and so it's an opportunity to trial a technique that is going to make it the safest possible for the cyclists and the walkers, particularly in school traffic times. Yep. And am I right in saying that this was a lot of the areas of risk were identified by the Safe Ways to School program, which in fact involved a considerable number of the schools, communities, in terms of identifying where they thought the risk lay to their kids. And I can understand Graham's point, the top of Duke Street, that is obviously a track that a lot of them take. And it is very narrow, and the footpath, even the footpath narrows down, and I'm not too sure what the width of the footpath is, but perception is the footpath goes down to between 2 and 3. 2 meters, no, 2. I was going to say 2 feet, not 2 feet, but
it's about a metre, Roger.
Yeah,
it's about a metre.
It's about a metre,
but it varies.
It's particular, and there's no other path on the other side. And Bowen Street is really becoming quite a higher traffic street as people are taking that as an alternative off Hamilton Road instead of going to the White Church roundabout. So they're coming down Bowen Street. And I know when I was doing my ticket touring around before the election, the residents of that street were concerned about the challenges of actually crossing that road, and they were the older population, you know, the seniors, and they were having concerns about that becoming quite a, well, I wouldn't call it a rat run, but I mean, I would call it they're treating that as an alternative route. So I think we've got to try something, and you know, you always in a trial get something that may not please everybody in the community, but when it comes to safety and security, then I think sometimes it's worthwhile trying something. So I'm supportive of those changes as a temporary measure to see how the community responds to them.
Brian, have you got the traffic figures from the counters? I mean, where are we sitting there? You mentioned something about 2,000 cars the other day.
So I'm right, aren't I? We don't have the traffic count details back yet. So it normally takes about a week or 10 days from once they pick up the counter, process the data and provide us with a report. But historically, we have, like Roger was saying, you know, Bryce Street, we've had complaints from the residents there about the volume of traffic and the speed of the traffic. So I think 18 months ago or so, we did put out some traffic counters at that time and found, yes, that at the north end, it was, I think, over 3,000 vehicles a day, and the speeds were, you know, creeping up. At the south end of Bryce Street towards the Duke Street corner, it drops away to, I think, about 2,000 vehicles a day.
Yeah, I thought you.
So yes, they are busy roads.
Yeah.
They're busier streets than typical in Cambridge for a residential street. But you're right, it does reflect that fact that traffic at times wants to go around Victoria Street, and we know a lot of the parents who are dropping off kids are, you know, drop and run. That's the way they're going.
Okay.
At different times of the day. So yeah, we certainly understand it will have an impact, and that's the reason it is a trial to see. Yeah.
Thank you, Liz.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Look, I think by and large, I'm quite happy with, especially on page 2, most of the options or suggestions, removing parking, Grey Street, William Street, Bryce Street.
Yeah.
You know, as a temporary measure, I think that this is probably what the community are looking for. I'm really concerned about the page 3 and the Wilson Street and the Duke Street. I think that this is going to come as a complete surprise. And I don't like surprises. I don't think the business community are going to like this surprise. And I don't think that elderly are going to like the surprise when they try and park at the library, because Wilson Street is where it's a very busy street where people trying to access the warehouse, the library, and often use it as a parking place for accessing our CBD. I'm not sure that we've done enough consultation with the business community just to trial it, even for 3 months. I suspect the first day this gets implemented, there'll be a big backlash because people aren't prepared, they're not ready, they haven't thought about where they're going to park. So I know that there have been some opportunities for feedback sessions, but I still think this is going to come as a surprise. And I just have a real sense of nervousness around this. is there an opportunity to do more consultation just on that that part of town first before we implement? You know, those particular businesses, you know, we were talking about on Wilson Street, you know, the hairdressers, the cafes, the carpet place, you know, there's a whole bunch of them along there. And if this just gets implemented and they knew nothing about it, this is, I suspect they will be very, very upset. So I guess, has that consultation been done specifically with them? Do you know?
Right. So we had a workshop with the schools and their parents, and they, none of them really worry about parking. Actually, I was quite surprised about that one. We can go to the business, and my plan to for parking is to provide a parking map about where they can park to lead them to our like Helix Lane car park, or even the other even the council car parks. So recently we have changed the time limits on our council car park. So we kind of remove all the long-term all-day parking activities around that area to somewhere else. And I noticed in our detailed design, we actually not remove that many parking along Wilson Street. So we still able to keep some of the parking along Wilson Street. So I haven't counted how many parking we're going to remove, probably about just about the section outside the council building, but we still able to keep some of the parking further away because the street is quite wide. So we're still able to keep some parallel parking along Wilson Street. Yeah, so it will.
I understand it's only on one side of the street that we're removing the parking. And look, and if that business community is aware of it and they are prepared for it,
sure,
let's trial it.
Yep.
But I suspect they're not. I suspect this will come as a complete surprise. Yep. And so that's my biggest concern right now.
Yeah, I certainly hear what you're saying. And you know, today, so we invited the Chamber of Commerce along to one of the workshops. I think you came along to that meeting. Not many business owners actually turned up to that one. We invited the warehouse and they didn't come or weren't able to come. But what we have seen is that actually a lot of those parks along Wilson Street are employees of shops who are parking there all day. So often it's not actually available for shoppers or other people. So yes, there is an impact, but once we had got through this process here today with hopefully the council supporting these traffic resolutions, there is a further public consultation to show people the detail of what it looks like, and it will be, you know, very obvious. So to the businesses in this area and the rest of town about where parking will be removed and these impacts. So we fully expect it'll get a lot of coverage in the press, and a lot of people will hear about it before implementation come sort of mid-February. So it will be quite a time period for that further consultation and discussions and for that feedback to come in. So hopefully we will remove that element of surprise.
Brian, did you realise that you're effectively going to do away with virtually all the parking on Wilson Street? Because on the other side, there's yellow lines, dotted yellow lines. You've got 3 apartments, you've got the carpet court, and that's actually their business. There's no actual footpath there. Then you come back to the shop with all the vegetables and what have you. Now, their 4 cars, when I go walking at 5:30, their 4 cars are right there in front of council, 1, 2, 3, 4. And there's one that's parking permanently in the Wycaria by the library that gets in a bit earlier than 5:30. And then, of course, you go on past the old yellow building, which has got yellow lines, and then you get down where the corner is by the fire station, where there's more yellow lines. So there's not going to be a hell of a lot down there.
Yeah. No, you're quite correct. You know, a good amount of the parking does get removed. Yeah. Some of the angle parking that's outside the school will be converted to parallel parking. Okay. Because this pop-up cycleway will take some of that space, but I think about 6 of the parking spaces, including the disabled car park space, will still be able to remain outside the school. So yes, it is probably, of all of the work that we're doing, it's probably one of the most challenging spots to do this work, with being in the CBD and with the parking pressures. But it's also one of the locations where even some of the retailers who came along, or the people who came to that evening, were saying, yes, they've nearly knocked off kids off their bicycles here. Kids are cycling and scooting along here already. And they are at risk, and the parking and the busy entranceways certainly add to that risk. So if we were to say, well, let's not do this or do nothing here, we would be not treating one of the most hazardous locations. And it is a trial. And I think if a retailer who wants a park to go to work has to park, 100 meters away or 200 meters away and walk to their business through the period of this trial, that is probably not a significant problem that would, should derail having a trial, I don't think. And if we think ahead to, what might this street look like long term if we were to say, hey, we've got, a lot of people crossing the Victoria Street Bridge and wanting to get to school or wanting to get to the middle school. Ultimately, this street, at least up to Duke Street, after that, there's probably debate about where is the best place for a walking cycling path to go. Is it straight up through Halley's Lane car park? Is it up Dick Street? Is it up Bryce Street? There might be a number of options that might be explored over time, but Wilson Street is a spot where it's always likely to be a strong desire line for walking and cycling. So this gives us an opportunity to trial it for 3 months, see what happens, see what the impacts are, because long term, I guess we want to find a suitable solution here, which will create a really safe route.
Brian, I can't see that you're going to lessen the traffic hazards by coming up there with that pop-up. Because first of all, you've got Davies Homes on the corner of Bar Street, and then you've got the ear people, and then you've got the dentist. So you've got 3 there. Then you've got the coming in and then going out of the warehouse. Big, lots of traffic. Same entrance going into the council car park, coming out the other end. Then you've got the Treetown Play Centre place there. Then you've got James Street. Then you've got Achievement House. Then there's one house in between, and then you're at the school ground. So I can't see any of those not going away. They're still going to be there as a hazard for people in that movement area. Am I correct there?
Yes, you're absolutely correct. So it'll always be a high vehicle location, but we know already it's also a high pedestrian and cycle location. So those two things have got to coexist somehow. And what might this look like in the future? I guess there's plenty of time to think about it, experiment, and come up with what is the ideal solution. But those different sorts of modes are going to have to coexist for the long term. So what are the best solutions for that? And to be quite blunt, if we say, yes, we want vehicle movements and we want pedestrians and cyclists, because they're often, we've got a school right there and people wanted to shop. Is parking really a high priority then if we've got so many movements? Do we say actually an employee being able to park all day in this location is the highest priority for this very valuable real estate that we want for transportation? My gut feeling is actually no, parking is not a priority for Wilson Street. It's vehicle movements and people movements will have to be our highest priority.
One of the biggest contributors to that is the Waitomo energy. I can come along here in the morning, there's 5 or 6 cars, and then they're heading down there. Philip.
So with regards to the fire station, I mean, that's a high priority of parking for those people that come in there for emergencies, and they came along to that community meeting at the council a month ago, and they raised concerns about the part, is this going to impact them? They're not just an employee that turns up for the day, they're coming in there for emergencies. what do we need to designate certain spots for them on the street? It's only parking, it's like disabled parking. It's a fire.
Yeah, actually, that was an interesting conversation with the fire service, and we're going to be having more discussions with them. They noted that one of their big issues was that the school parking at times, creates that chaos. And if there's a fire alarm and they've got to leave and people are parked all over the place, that creates a lot of difficulty for them. So actually rationalising the parking here will create an improvement for them, less likely that they're going to be caught up with people, reversing out of angle parks or stopping where they shouldn't. So yes, we'll be working closely with them, but I could see that, doing what we're doing long term offers some improvement for them, not a disadvantage.
Right, Roger first, sorry,
Yeah.
then you.
James Street, is there any capacity in James Street to increase parking, to have it more organised down James Street, so you actually compensate for some of the lost parks in Wilson Street?
Yes, potentially. I think it does largely get parked out anyway,
Right.
but there might be opportunity to put a few white lines in there to control that a bit better and make it a little bit more efficient.
I'm pretty sure it's already white line, Brian.
It has got some white lines, yes, definitely.
Yeah. Brian, the other day, sorry, Andrew, just before you, when we talked about looking at perhaps the kids going out through the Halley's Lane car park, yesterday morning I had a look around and there's a 5-metre walkway between the church, Bridges Church, and accounted for, which when they got their resource consent for the church, they didn't have to pay a parking fee. They're allowed on a Sunday to use the Halley's Lane car park, and that's the entrance that their parishioners come through into the main door. And I thought when I was there yesterday, it would be a hell of a good way for them to go down through there in a safe way of not having that traffic that was and probably come out back up in Alpha Street. Did you look at that? Did you see what I'm thinking about that?
Yes, so certainly when we were looking at this, we canvassed a few different options using Bryce Street or Dick Street. Halley's Lane car park is something that is definitely worth a look at for a long-term fix. It was trying to do something temporary was going to be quite tricky, and then it still meant that we would have to do something temporary along Alpha Street and past the medical centre and the like to connect up. So
there's a cycle lane there, of course.
Yes,
there's a white cycle lane
on the road.
Yes. It's a big wide street, so it's fantastic for that.
So certainly we think that has got real possibilities for the future to do something permanent, which might mean that the one way of the end of Duke Street is not required. But I think that's a substantial investment in potentially buying property or easements or other things to allow that to happen. But it's certainly on our radar as a future option.
Thanks, Brian. Andrew, you had a question?
Yeah, well, I don't know if it's a question really, but living in Te Awamutu, I'm not as familiar, obviously, with the streets and traffic flows of Cambridge as the Cambridge people. But the thing you've said that's resonated with me is the safety of the kids cycling and scooting, and that's got to be our priority, I believe. So I guess my question is, are you sure that these treatments will in fact provide a safer or a safer possible solution for those people? So that's one. The second part is I feel Liz is probably correct in what she's saying about Wilson Street and the retailers there, but I also totally take on board your comments about if they have to walk 100 or 200 meters to their workplace, then so be it. That's not the end of the world. So yeah, do you have a comment re the safety issue?
So certainly we've been designing these sort of safety treatments with Becca and with Transport Agency sort of expert advice. These types of treatments are being done all around the country as part of this Innovating Streets program. And the same sort of treatment of pop-up cycleway has been used on numerous streets. So it has markings, it has planter boxes down the edge of it. It's wide enough for two-way cycling. It has speed bumps at the driveways, so anybody coming and going from driveways has to slow right down. They can't just whistle across it. And at those locations where there is conflict potential, we've done everything that we can in a temporary way to make it as safe as possible. It's certainly, when you think about it, those kids are whistling along there now on their scooters and bikes and walking, and often those children are on the footpath and they're almost heedless of what's happening beside them because they're just interested in making that last leg of their journey to school. So anything that provides more space around them where they're more visible is going to be an improvement on what we have now.
Phil?
Just on what Andrew was saying about parking.
Roger, can you turn your microphone off?
With Haley's Lane, half of it has got time restriction on it. Can that be removed so people are allowed to park? Because some people say, well, I only can park there for 120 hours, I think, 120 minutes, I think it is. Can that be removed so that it encourages them to park there, or allow them to park there all day?
Yeah, so I think probably less than a quarter of the car parks in Haley's Lane have a time restriction on them, and they're mainly around the toilet block and in that location where they're closest to the shops, I guess you'd say. So the vast majority are not time restricted. Interestingly, at our meeting with the school, a number of the parents were actually using Haley's Lane at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. They were parking there because they said there was often plenty of capacity at that time of day. So they were parking there and walking down and meeting their children. So we expect that sort of activity will increase as a result of removing some parking from Duke Street.
Yeah, that's where they come down that walkway. That Liz first.
I would like to keep Haley's Lane as it is now, to be honest. The parking, I think it's a good balance. Some part of it has restrictions, but a big part of it doesn't. I think if we change that, we'd be kind of struggling. So I'm still just wanting to understand with the library, patrons to the library. I think we're going to find that less people will use the library if they can't park outside it. So I still don't feel like we've got a good plan around, and I know we've changed the car parking timing around that, and we're going to offer options. But if you can't walk far, and I just don't think we've quite catered for a certain sector. That's all. So I just raised that point that I'm just a little bit nervous around that. And if you are, I guess, did I understand that you're happy to liaise directly with the warehouse and the shops on Wilson Street to ensure that they have plenty of notice in advance that this is what's going to happen? Then I feel a lot happier about that. Don't forget there are businesses along there that open late hours. And so they need a safe place to park, potentially just in the latter part of the afternoon. So it's just getting that right. I think often we are criticised for making a decision and then consulting, and I think this is what this looks like. I really feel that we should have consulted and given the detail out before we're making this decision right now. Even though it's temporary, it's still a decision. And it's going to affect people. So I just want to try and get that consultation and the detail with it a little bit better if we can.
Brian, can I just build on Liz's comments? If we're going to go back, is it possible to go to the school, to Mike's school, and ask the kids who walks to school now, who comes on their bikes, who comes by the car, and if this went in, what would be the effect? Would they get out of the car and get a scooter or get a bike, just to get a feel for that? Is that appropriate?
So we actually asked that question during our early engagement with the schools. So we created a survey, ask people if we provide a safe improvements along those routes, will you want to walk, bike, or scoot to the school? And I think the feedback we received, I think most of them, a large number of them, would like to consider some other travel choices. It
would have been good to have all that information in front of us so that we could have made a a better decision, but it's not there. So it's like I think, to be fair, the traffic counting mechanism went in far too late. I mean, it only got pulled out last Thursday, and we could have had those analysed well before this. The next question I want to ask is, why does it have to be 3 months? Can it be 2 months? Can it be a month?
I guess the recommendation from the Transport Agency is that in the first 3 weeks, it takes people 3 weeks to recognise that something's changed, and they might have to change their. Some people won't drive those roads every day, so some people will find out, in a week or 2 weeks' time that things have changed. But 3 weeks, we should resist making any changes to the temporary works unless an obvious safety issue arises. And then that leaves us, 3 months of just beating it in. We do the monitoring, so we'll have the traffic counters out again. We'll find out, how much have traffic volumes changed, what speed change has there been. We've put out people counters, so these are little electronic devices strapped to a pole or something, and they count the signature of not by your mobile phone or anything like that, but just the fact that a pedestrian or a cyclist has passed. So those things are in place now, or largely in place, and we're counting the number of people. And we'll have that right through the whole trial and see how much the people's habits change and the uptake of walking and cycling. So it really is making that trial long enough to really gauge whether we've made an impact or not.
So with some of the things we've heard today, can we defer this for a month or so to get another feeling when you're going to be talking to the shop owners or those people that that didn't come to the meeting but we need to talk to? What can we do here?
Right.
Liz, you got a suggestion or something? That
I'm just mindful of the Christmas period, the school holiday period. If we're implementing this in mid-February, a lot of people aren't even back, until 1st of February, or potentially not back until then. So, I mean, I don't want to, I'm sure you've got lots of deadlines and things to work towards, but that consultation is crucial. This can't be a surprise.
No. And Reagan's sitting there and sending me messages, just reminding me. We've got a really good comms plan. I mean, because this is a temporary trial, this is one of the things that will have more comms to it than probably 99% of the things that council does. So next week, there's a comms plan or a comms engagement to get the message out. Surveys and other things that are going on to really publicise this very widely. As I say, we've had meetings with the Chamber of Commerce. We've talked them through it. We've had some pretty positive feedback from them in terms of it's great. It starts to open up the CBD to more people-centric activities, walking and cycling and other things, all of the things that in the Cambridge Town Concept Plan, they were saying we want this sort of thing. I'm pretty confident that before anything happens, before any trucks turn up with signs or markings or anything else, people will have heard a lot about it. They'll probably be sick of hearing about it, and they'll have had a great opportunity to provide feedback.
Clear.
I just wanted to check about the adjustments that might be made during the trial. You said you don't want to make any changes for 3 weeks unless there's a safety issue. But then after that, I presume that as you're getting feedback from the users and that adjustments can be made. So it's kind of like an iterative process and slight improvements or tweaks, as things pan out, which I'd be really happy with. It wasn't that clear in the papers that we got, but because I think that's a good way of handling it, where you might have issues arise, particularly with parties that might not have had much of the consultation, that there is the opportunity to work with them and look at ways to make things a bit more smoother. I'm actually pretty excited about the whole proposal, and if it goes well, I'd love to see it rolled out in other parts of the district if possible, Tuamutu, like Pirongia.
We can sell it to you.
Well, I want to see what the
Might
outcomes
have
are.
some leftover
But
things.
Brian,
I think it's a great opportunity for us. Yeah, so.
I walked up town on Saturday morning, and I felt the wrath of the retailers up there, because on Friday afternoon, Treescape came and blocked the road and started to trim the trees in the middle of the. And mate, were they septic! I met some people I didn't know could get stroppy, but they were not happy, and that should have never happened. And if I get that reaction from this, yeah, I won't be going downtown. Yeah. Roger.
That the conflict of vehicles and pedestrians on side street exits, and I understand in Wilson Street because of the warehouse and the council. But we were talking just a couple of weeks ago about, in fact, in central government, there are moves afoot to actually change the priority of those side streets to pedestrian ways. So in fact, the responsibility comes on traffic to actually monitor the safety of the crossing. How far away do you think is that? Are we going to see that coming in a couple of months?
I would like to say yes, but I think any time that traffic regulations change, there's always quite a long lead-in period for it. So the government was doing the consultation basically almost during the COVID period. They call it the Accessible Streets Package, and it's, I guess, starting to align New Zealand more with the way the European countries do it, in that if you are heading straight ahead within the road corridor, so you might be on a cycle lane or a footpath, if you're heading straight ahead and not turning, then any turning traffic has to give way to you, which is what happens with driving. But at the moment, drivers can whistle straight round left or right into an intersection, and they don't have to give way to anybody who's walking or cycling along the road parallel to them. So the government wants to change that. Well, they certainly, in their consultation material suggested a range of different options, but it strongly suggests that they want to enact that, put it into regulation. But hopefully 2021 we'll hear more about how they're progressing with that.
Okay, we've had a pretty good go. It's not my intention to stifle any debate, but we've had some really good serious talks about it, and there are two, an A and B in the recommendations. So you're too quick, Phil. No, Philip's moving. If I have a seconder, please. Thank you, Roger. All those in favour say aye. Against? I'll vote against it. I'll have that recorded, please. Carried. Thank you. New Zealand Cycling Festival 2021, temporary request for road closure. Right, well, there's several of them. Who's presenting this? Hi, Julie.
Morning.
Hi. I'll see you tomorrow morning.
You will, yes. We'll sort out parking in Bath Street.
Thank you.
tomorrow.
Yeah. Can you bring some extra paint? I've got some jobs for you.
For today, we've got two event road closures to look at. The first one being the Ride Cycling Festival on the 13th and 14th of February.
Yep. Yep. No issues with that in terms of the publication or something?
No.
No. Okay. So we've got A, B, and C there. If somebody would like to move that. Lou, thank you. Andrew, all those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Rangio Afia, and I got a email from
Bill Harris.
Bill, yes, yesterday, saying that they don't need the road closed for so long, but we're going to run with it as it is because it's been advertised.
That's what we've advertised,
yes,
so we need to stick with that for the meantime. And in terms of the traffic management plan, if they take things away early, that doesn't affect it. If they leave things out longer than they've said, then that does. So
a lady on the left gave me some guidance, so it was a very, very useful phone call. So there's an A, B, and C to that recommendation. If I've got a couple of people, thank you, Marcus. Thank you, Lou. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. And transfer of bridges contract to the Waikato Local Authority Shared Services, or
I'll leave that to
WLAS.
somebody
Is that
else.
not your department? Thank you. Who's coming? Mike, you come in. Oh, g'day, Mike. You come in. Good to see you, mate. This is sensible stuff. This is good. Yeah.
Good morning, Chairman and Councillors. So I just wish to present my report for your consideration today. I'm seeking your approval to transfer the contract administration for the bridges contract, the collaborative bridges contract for 2 Waipa District Council contracts to WLAS. The contracts are a collaborative contract between Waipa and 3 other councils for one of the contracts, and the other contract, it's 3 councils, and Waipa is not actually a party to those contracts, to that contract. The transfer reduces the risk to Waipa, and WLAS are, so at the moment I run 3 other contracts through WLAS, and this would just align these 2 bridge contracts with the other contracts which I run through LAS.
And Mike, this has been going for a while, hasn't it? We've worked in this with some. Is this at the end of an agreement and you're doing another one?
Yes, no. So this is we're rolling the contract over, but the contract actually started. The bridges started before RATA and before LAS. So it's one of those which sort of just carried on following that same pattern, but it's probably more appropriate to bring it into LAS.
Yeah, it's worked really well, I think.
It has, yes.
Any questions on Mike? Yeah, Andrew.
This just seems to me eminently sensible, and I'd like to move recommendations A, B and C.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Whoa, easy, guys. Easy. I'll go. Bruce, thank you. Bruce seconded. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Thank you, Mike. Cheers. Cheers. We're moving now into the meeting schedule for the new year. That looks all bona fide, looks all good. No, not too many clashes there. Okay, Liz has moved and Claire. All right, recommendation, I'll put it. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Next one is a resolution to exclude the public. Move in a second, please. Thank you, Marcus.